studies textbooks and how they contribute to stereotypes and misconceptions that exist about Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans today. Okay, so my argument for this presentation is that I've been using social studies textbooks from the early 20th century to the present day as my primary sources, and I argue with using these that American social studies textbooks have a lack of deduction about Latino history and what it means to be Latino, particularly Puerto Rican, that this contributes to the misconceptions and stereotypes had about Puerto Ricans in American society today. When researching through these textbooks, I examined the lengths in which each textbook devotes to describing Puerto Ricans and also the language that they use describing Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans. Personally, to me, this project holds importance because as a woman of half Puerto Rican heritage, I have always felt like I have never known enough about my own people. I have never heard enough about my own Puerto Rican history, and it's kind of been swept underneath the cracks, never being discussed in American society. In school, I cannot tell you ever one moment where we ever discussed the U.S. relationship with Puerto Rico, despite it being a U.S. territory for over the past 100 years. Why is Puerto Rican history silenced, especially when it is still a part of the United States today? Why have I never known enough about my own Puerto Rican heritage, and why is it never discussed? Why when I admit to people that I am Puerto Rican, they act shocked? And what preset standard of Puerto Ricans am I not meeting? Also, this project holds importance to me as well because I am pursuing becoming a social studies educator. And so I want to see how these books look so that how do people learn social studies and about minority groups. Also though, besides this project's importance to me, this research has an even greater importance. Puerto Rico has for a long time been in a colonial status as the United States has exercised continuous political and economic control on the island. Many Puerto Ricans have migrated to the United States, and in result, their experiences in this nation are being shaped as the labeling of second-class citizen. American social studies textbooks can reveal the American attitude historically since the conquest of Puerto Rico, and what stereotypes and misconceptions about Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans have continued persisting within the past century. So I've been asking myself two different research questions as I've looked through all these books. And the first question I have been asking myself is, have American social studies textbooks representations of Puerto Rico changed at all in the past century? And my second question is, how have these representations possibly influenced and led to the misconceptions and stereotypes had about Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans today? So my presentation, I've organized it in the following way for you guys. First, I'll be showing you samples of textbooks from the 1900s to the 1950s that I've looked at. Then books from the 60s through the 80s. And then lastly, textbooks from the 2000s through the present day. So in this slide is a picture of all the textbooks that I examined in this period from the 1900s to the 1950s. They're written by a variety of authors, published by a variety of companies, and also from different years. And the first book I will show you is this one here. In many of these early 20th century textbooks, I examined the lengths, I examined their prefaces and what were their aims and goals for these books. Many were stated like this one here, The Plain Story of American History from 1916. At the top of the excerpt, you can see it says, "My purpose in writing this book is expressed in the title. I wish that it may be a plain story of the achievement of human beings in that part of the Western Hemisphere which is now the United States of America. To relate the main facts clearly and broadly, rather than to describe many detailed occurrences." And then at the end of the paragraph, it reads, "I wish that this book may serve, along with many other excellent works of a similar scope, to give the American youth a better appreciation of the glorious history of their native land, and to create in them a warmer purpose to serve their country and promote its progress." As you can see, many of these textbooks promote the use of only pro-American sentiment, not an understanding of other perspectives, and wanting to only avoid controversy to And Puerto Rico was captured 18 years before this book was written, and all it says in this excerpt is that there was no opposition. In this textbook, all the school child would walk away thinking is that Puerto Ricans were weak and passive, and they had a lack of agency. Here in this textbook as well, Life in Modern America from 1953, it continues also to make Puerto Ricans look passive. Here it clearly states that the United States plans to keep controlling it, that the Puerto Ricans welcome it, are glad of it, and that they don't mind at all. I think you get my idea of the theme I'm trying to show you in all these textbooks. Okay, so here in this textbook, The Growth of the American People and Nation from 1942, besides just depicting Puerto Ricans as passive, as weak, having no say, yet still somehow happy, these textbooks also have another common theme. Each attempts to justify the U.S. occupation of the island. So you can see it clearly in this paragraph here from this book, and it states at the top, right at the very top, that Puerto Ricans have always been a loyal and peaceful people. This is, me personally, I think this is serving as a justification for why Americans like them and not to control them. Then, at the bottom of the second paragraph, it will read, Puerto Rico has a better climate for white people, which I think is used as another justification for why it's good for Americans to stay there. And then, fully promoting Americanization in the rest of this excerpt, it states that Puerto Ricans are poor and that the U.S. helps them. Roads, schools, industries, and health have built up since the American presence on the island. It makes the U.S. appear as a protector, a father figure to the poor Puerto Rico. However, this text does not mention the subjectivities the U.S. has enforced on the island. It doesn't mention that while building up industry, that it forced many Puerto Ricans to move, giving their land to U.S. companies. It doesn't mention forcing Puerto Rican school children in schools to speak and learn in English and have their histories and education rewritten for them, having their culture stripped from them, a culture that they were proud of. This paragraph of Americanization is so biased, and it only shows supposedly what America has done to improve the island, but not at all how Americanization has made Puerto Ricans suffer and sacrifice simultaneously. A school child most likely would walk away with reading this, thinking, Puerto Ricans need our help, and as an American, I am so good to them, because they have not painted the entire picture here in this textbook. Next, I'll be showing you books from the 1960s to 1980s, and these books are from a variety of social studies disciplines, American government, American history, world geography, also published by different companies and written by different authors. In the 1960s, many books still were carrying the same narratives as previous textbooks. Not enough said about Puerto Ricans, and all that was said was how Puerto Ricans only benefited from U.S. intervention. We could see it in this text from the Human Achievement in 1967. It states somewhere in there, Puerto Ricans content. That's it. There's still no agency. Here in Our Widening World from 1961, it only includes this short narrative about Puerto Ricans. All it states is that the Puerto Ricans still choose to remain with us, not discussing the marginal vote formed against Commonwealth status. Still surface-level description that only leads school children to believing American interests in Puerto Rico are the best. In the 1970s, however, after the Civil Rights Movement, textbooks were challenged to change their interpretations of minority groups and devote more narrative and multiple perspective taking into these groups' experiences. However, with changing multiple perspectives, all most of these textbooks do is devote minority groups, particularly Puerto Ricans, experience to living in poverty. This can be seen in this textbook here, The Challenge of American Democracy from 1974. In this entire textbook, it only states Puerto Rico once in the index in the back of the book, and it leads to this page where all it says is Puerto Ricans are poor, in a section you can see titled The Poor. With the text saying this, a student using this book would only walk away thinking Puerto Ricans are poor, contributing to their notion of them as a second-class citizen. All that is mentioned of Puerto Rico is this tiny paragraph shown here. And all a student would possibly gain from this passage is that Puerto Ricans are still passive and under the dictate of U.S. hands, similar to narratives in the 1900s through 1950s as well. This textbook mentioned Puerto Ricans, I would say, in a positive light. It includes Puerto Rico in the section about Latin America as well. It mentions the ethnic diversity of Puerto Ricans in comparison to other books never mentioning it all. The textbook does state that Puerto Ricans contribute to a vibrant and large Hispanic community in American society, which depicts Puerto Ricans positively. However, this book does not cover any of the experiences Puerto Ricans do and have faced. These passages are still so surface level. All a student would still walk away with from this textbook is that Puerto Ricans are happy, as seen in the picture, and many have moved to cities in the United States, but not knowing why they moved there at all. In this last example, this large textbook as well minimally discusses Puerto Rico. The only time it mentions the island in this entire book is in its section about the Spanish-American War. And all it states is the U.S. received Puerto Rico. That is it. Doesn't describe any opposition, any experience about Puerto Ricans, and what has happened to Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans as it has still been dominated by the U.S. This textbook silences any room for discussion or thought of the island and the Puerto Ricans. This description hardly differs at all from those in the 1900s, and all that differs is that Puerto Rico is not spelled Puerto Rico. So my results from showing you all these textbooks is that in these books there's a lack of regard to Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans. There's hardly been no change in narrative at all from the early 20th century to now. All depict Puerto Rico as marginal and insignificant with a lack of attention given in books to further describe in-depth situations on the island and other people. And all use language that depicts Puerto Ricans benefiting from U.S. involvement and Americanization. American social studies textbooks in the past and in the present have now provided another perspective to the U.S. relationship with Puerto Rico, and also deny Puerto Ricans agency while being conquested by the U.S. Continual conquest of Puerto Rico still is depicted as a story with a happy ending for Puerto Ricans and shows the U.S. as benefactors. It denies another side of the story that can have students critically analyze the U.S. purpose on the island. Each book does not allow students to contemplate Puerto Rico at all. With its lack of content and knowledge, it becomes barely a thought to many Americans. Nothing is done in these books to promote students' involvement with the island as a democratic civic participant. With this, Puerto Rico's situation, without productive change, will remain in the same predicament it is in today and has been for the past 100 years. American social studies textbooks lack a production of knowledge about Puerto Rican history in regards to the U.S. involvement, makes the Puerto Rican experience in the United States harder, as it contributes to the struggle many have in finding their identity in a society that treats their culture as de facto, unimportant, marginal, and for the most part also negative